Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. We were trying to play a snippet of our next guest appearance on the Dry Bar comedy special from Provo, Utah. We'll get that figured out. But in the meantime, let me introduce you to this very funny gentleman who exploded onto the Boston comedy scene in 2005 and was quickly established as one of the area's hottest young comics. And Boston is a great comedy scene. If you emerge out of that area, you are legit. And since then, he's appeared on television shows like Comedy Up Late in Australia, BET's 50 Central, Laugh Mob's Laugh Track on True TV, and TBN's Mike Huckabee Show, and has his own Dry Bar comedy special, a little snippet we were attempting to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, you can see him live now, talking and laughing and everything. Please welcome to the show the very talented Orlando Baxter. What's up, Orlando?
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you for having me here, man.
Yes, sir, man. It's great to have you on the show. Man, oh my gosh, I hate that we could not play that. You were talking about being an ex-teacher, and it's so funny, dude. But just dealing with kids in the school system, man, it's so many different personalities that you have, especially going from middle school up. I mean, you could write a book about that stuff, man. But that being said, it's great having you on the show. Orlando, what have you been doing during the midst of the pandemic as a comic to stay busy?
I've just been trying to adjust to it's a new situation, so I've been Zooming my life away, meaning nice shirts and no pants, and just kind of just taking gigs online. And I hated it at first because it's a different adjustment to the live shows, but eventually I kind of got used to it, and now I just do a lot of that. And I do live shows, which are rare every now and then, but things are starting to open back up, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, things are starting to slowly open up. I just got done doing a Zoom open mic, just try to stay on top of things and what have you. And you got to get used to the delayed response. It takes 3 to 4 seconds for whatever you say to actually hit.
Yeah.
And then vice versa for the laugh to hit you back. You got to kind of get into that rhythm of it and everything. And I've actually got a gig coming up, an hour-long gig on Zoom for church. And it's, and you can't, sometimes you can't see anybody. You're just hoping that your stuff is working. And you feel like you're bombing. And then you get the report back and people, oh, that was great. I mean, people really seem to we don't like it as comedians because we can't establish a rhythm.
Yeah. It's very difficult. Comedy to me is like communication. You know what I mean? Like except the person isn't talking back to you, they're laughing back at you. So you kind of, you use it as like a gauge. All right, this is kind of sets your tempo and your timing and everything like that. So yeah, Zoom shows can be difficult. Like for me, what was helpful for me was just understanding that, this platform is not a live platform. So don't have the same expectations, in terms of just how you feel about it, in general. Like, I think, it's the same way when you do like sometimes I'll do colleges, and I got a lot of friends that do colleges, and they don't like it because it's a younger crowd. There might be limitations in terms of what you can say and what they don't want you to say, and you just gotta. And the kids are younger, and it's like a lot of times their first time watching live comedy, and you just gotta understand that going in and not beat yourself up over it, which comics have a tendency to do a lot. So. Yeah, the Zoom was like that for me. Like, I just kind of was like, all right, this is what it is. And as the comic, if I can have some say so on the show in terms of having laughter and having people on, then I will speak up and say something. You know what I mean?
Well, in 2021, it's so easy to offend people. It's not like stand-up was back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, all lines were just destroyed and nobody cared. It was funny. I mean, you could talk about gays, you can make ethnic jokes, you can talk about everybody, and nobody got mad back then. And so now you could be a clean comic, which you and I are, and still get somebody mad. So and you just have to learn how to navigate through it. It's all about making adjustments. A lot of comics don't like doing college because of the political correctness that exists there. And, you just have to learn how to deal with it. First of all, you can't care. And then secondly, you just have to go, okay, they don't want to talk about this. They don't want to talk about that. So you just don't go there. I did a high school once, and I had never done a high school, but they were doing a cancer benefit, and I was asked to do it. And I was like, yeah, I'll absolutely. And I was like, but I don't know how I'm going to navigate high school kids. And it turned out well. I did very well. It was a gymnasium full of high school kids, but it turned out well, man. It's like, wow, what in the world can I say? Because then you got all the faculty and parents. So you could really get some folks mad up in that joint, dude. So I had to be really careful, but it worked out. But you're right. Things are starting to slowly get back to normal. Do you have a time frame in your mind, like when we may actually be all the way back?
I'm not sure, because it's really how these pandemic numbers, work out. If they're steadily going down, I think more things will open up. And as long as more people are getting the vaccine and feeling more comfortable about being out, then you'll see things pick back up. But I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm thinking like fall. I mean, summer's not a great time for live comedy anyway. It's one of the more difficult times, in my opinion, at least, just because people just want to be outside. But so I'm thinking like fall. Hopefully, fall things will pick up to hopefully 50 to 75% of what they were.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Going forward, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, now you don't seem to be someone that would be all for the outdoor stuff. What do you think about outdoor shows?
Listen, I never was a fan of outdoor shows
Yeah,
before this
yeah,
pandemic. You know what I mean? But now, since this pandemic happened, I'm like, oh, please give me an outdoor show, because it's the closest thing you have to live. And it's to me, it's even better than a Zoom show. But
yeah.
but yeah, it just depends. It depends on the situation. I think I miss live stand-up so much that any outdoor show it just seems like a good idea, regardless, just because that's what I'm used to doing, live shows. But yeah, I'm for live shows. I'm for them. If you got them, send me to them, man.
Do you know Karen Parrish?
Do I know Karen Parrish?
Yeah.
I don't think I do, but I might.
Okay. Well, that's my cousin typing in right there, so I don't know where she's going with that, but I'm like, all right, okay. I'll do. She probably thinks that you're related to her or something. I don't know, but anyway, Orlando, I tell you, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Were you about to say something?
No. I do have an uncle. And with one of my uncles. I think his last name is Parrish. I'm not sure. It's not a distant. Yeah, kind of like this. I didn't grow up with him, but that's a familiar last name.
Okay, it looks like that's where she might be going. But let me ask you a question. This is a typical question for a comedian right here, Orlando.
Yeah.
That people always want to say, "Hey, were you a class clown?" Orlando, were you a class clown?
No, I was not a class clown. I was not. I was a funny guy. I was a very funny guy amongst my friends, but I was more I was into academics, man. My goal when I was young was to be the first person in my family to go to college. So
okay,
school, I was focused on school. I was focused on athletics, and comedy was just the thing that I did. Joking around was the thing I did in between. I was serious with my schoolwork, and I felt like I couldn't do both. You know what I mean? So, so when I was in the classroom, I was kind of like focused on what I needed to do.
So our good friend Corey Rodriguez says his uncle is Robert Parrish.
No. My uncle's not Robert Parrish. In fact, Corey kind of looks a little bit like Robert Parrish when you think about it, but that's another story.
Okay. The Chief, you gotta love the Chief, man. And being from the Boston area, I was talking about the fact that Boston is a great comedy town, man. I mean, you got Chicago, New York, of course, Los Angeles, Houston, believe it or not, is a really good comedy town. But I would actually, and I'd love to hear your response to this. I would actually rate LA and New York 1, 2, take your pick, and then Boston.
Well, I mean, obviously, I got a bias towards Boston. There's a lot of great comics that have come out of this scene. It's a great city to grow in. Lots of clubs, lots of talented comedians. And I think one of the big things about Boston is it is a scene where you can develop quickly, especially if you're good in terms of doing longer sets. Like, you can move up a lot quicker. And there's plenty of rooms, and it's around New England. So there's a lot of stuff going on around New England. So in Rhode Island and Connecticut and wherever.
Yeah.
So it's a good little area to grow up in. And then it's got that reputation. When you say you're from the area, it's respected. So yes, it's definitely one of the better scenes, I think, in the country.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about the Boston comedy scene. I know Bill Burr is from the Boston area and a lot of other good comics, but I've always kind of wanted to go up there to Boston and see what the scene is like. Now I'm in the DC area. Okay. Have you ever performed in DC?
Yes. I've done DC improv many times. I've also done I opened for Joe Coy. So I've done some theaters out there, and I opened for Whitney Cummings. I did like a Jewish temple out there one time. But I love DC. I love DC audiences. It's very diverse in my opinion, and just they love comedy, and I love that DC Improv Room. It's one of my favorite clubs, actually.
How would you compare DC with Boston?
I think the DC scene, like I said, I've only been to a few places. Some really, I know some amazing comics from out there, but I would say, from what I know, I just think that in terms of audience wise, because that's all I can really compare it to. DC seems to be a lot more diverse than Boston. I think if there was some knock on Boston, it would be the audiences are not as diverse, so you get used to performing in front of one type of audience.
Okay.
And which is very helpful until you run into a situation where it's not that type of audience, and then you got to kind of learn how to perform in front of a more diverse audience. And
well, here's the thing too, Orlando. DC is a town I've found, because I've cut my teeth in DC, so whenever I go outside, I seem to have an easier time for whatever reason. A lot of DC comics will tell you that, because DC is very diverse. You're right. It's very diverse, but it's also a highbrow town. So, it's very political, and people are generally tight. But the long and the short of that is, if you are a comic that writes well, you're going to do very well, very good in DC. If you're a good joke teller and you write your jokes pretty well, you'll do fine. But you can't get up there and be like just a talent, or you're gonna have some tough sledding in DC. You know what I mean? And please correct me if I'm wrong. Like, if I went to Philly, if I went to Boston, if I went to New York, places like that, or even to Houston, people there, they just want to have a good time. As long as you can bring the funny, they don't care about all the how well the joke was written. Just bring the funny. Let's have a good time. Whatever, yada yada yada. But that's not the case in DC. It's like, but you gotta be funny. It's gotta make sense, or I'm not gonna give you anything for free. So I don't know if you'd ever noticed that when you're in DC.
I did not notice that because that's to be honest with you, that's kind of a reputation for Boston. You know,
Okay.
a scene with good writers. You know, a decent writers. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can't just you got to be able to write somewhat. You know, whatever. But I kind of agree with you in terms of like, I mean, you know, if you're funny, you're funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those are kind of like my favorite types of audiences. You know, those are the types of comics that move me the most. Um, I'm not, you know, when I watch other comedians, I'm not like so focused on the writing, but I do like writing. You know what I mean? I do like a comic that can write, but they have to be funny. At the end of the day, they have to be funny. You know?
Yeah, and that's pretty much and DC Improv has a great rep. That is a great comedy club.
Yeah.
DC Improv is a great comedy club, and they bring in, you know, top performers, and obviously you're a good performer. I mean, you would never have an issue with good writing. I mean, you've already got your set. You've been doing it for a while. So, I mean, your stuff's pretty much gold. So you wouldn't have that issue. But that's one thing that DC has a reputation for, is that it's a little bit abrasive, a little brazen, a little tight, a little too political. That's kind of the MO for the area. But if you come in and you got your stuff together, I mean, it's all good, but they don't give anything. You're not going to get one free laugh in this area, which actually I think makes you a better comic. You think about Martin Lawrence, Dave Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Mike Birbiglia, Earthquake. I mean, a lot of good comics have come out of here, and then they roll out. So, I mean, they're gone. They don't really generally come back.
They all roll out. I mean, that's another knock on Boston. There's not like an industry here. So you have to move to New York or LA. So, and I think DC probably has the same problem.
Now, why is it, Orlando, that it is very important? It's very, very important, Orlando, that we be careful who we bully.
I think you got to be careful who you bully, because sometimes, man, just because a person appears to be someone that looks like the perfect victim, they might not be the victim. I was somebody like that. I was a project kid that grew up with glasses. I looked exactly like Steve Urkel growing up, but my mentality was a little bit different. You know what I mean? So you know, there was a situation where a kid bullied me, and I stabbed him with a pencil, which is probably he was not expecting that. And,
no, he wasn't expecting it. No.
So you just gotta be careful, man. Like who you're messing with,
dude. It's important to make sure that the bully thinks you're crazy.
Yeah, of course.
Like I remember I was in the 8th grade, dude. I mean, I'm this little dwarf, dude, and I mean, one of the football stars on the team, you know, he thought he was gonna have some fun with me, dude. And I took a compass and I cut his cheek. I cut his cheek with a compass, and he was like, this dude's great." But you know, you never know what that perfect victim is going to do.
Yeah. Don't watch TV. You're fed up off the stereotypes that you see on TV and think that people are like that in real life, and it could be a problem.
It could be, dude. I've seen guys that were like the perfect victim. They don't say anything. They don't bother anybody. They're always getting picked on, and then one day they snap and beat up 5 kids.
Oh yeah, no, I would see it at school all the time. That that quiet person is usually the most dangerous person in that classroom sometimes, and like people will always test that all the time. And
So. Hey, what's up, John? Jonathan Nicholas is a motivational comedian in the DC area. Actually, Jonathan is actually down in Florida. Nice. Thanks for hanging out, bro. Yeah, man, I tell you, man, I love it, though. I love that because there are people out there that will do serious damage, and they don't bother anybody. They're just as nice and easygoing, peaceful, all of that.
Yeah.
And then that one day, the
Yep.
bully found out, never again, not you.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, but no, I had to ask you about that, man. That's and then why is it that people? I love this one. Why is it that people think that black people don't need sunblock?
I mean, I just think it's like this stereotype that because our skin is darker that we can't burn, which is it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So I think that because people believe we can't burn, they think there's
Yeah.
no need for a sunblock when it's not true. I mean, great. I'm assuming we might not take as long to burn. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it might take
Yeah.
as
Well,
long
it take as long.
to get there. Huh?
It wouldn't take as long, Orlando. And my thing is, you know what? I love the fact that people think that we don't need it because we do need it.
We
But
do need it.
we need it. But on top of that, Orlando, we're not going to lay there on purpose in the sun either.
Yeah, no, we're not.
We're not doing that.
We're
And,
not. And I think also the fact that we don't, you know how they slab it on their skin, man. They got it all on their skin, and you see them coming. They look like ghosts. It's dripping off their skin. And we have a tendency, we rub it in. We make sure we treat it like lotion. Let's get it in there, right? So it's a different type of approach how we apply it. And I just think that some people have this misconception that we don't use it. It's just weird.
Well, black people's skin soak up the sun, John. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, Orlando, we got to use that sunblock, man. I'm telling you, that sun is dangerous. I mean, we're not Superman or nothing.
No, listen, I'm dark and I burn. Like if I'm out long enough, man, my shoulders stop peeling and this, that, and the other. But yeah.
Hey, John, you know what? And black people also know when to get out of the sun.
Yes, exactly. We look for the shade when we go to places sometimes.
And cocoa butter is not sunscreen. That's right, Jill.
Yeah, we know that. We know that. We're putting cocoa butter on in the shade. We know that. Like,
oh, gosh. That's funny. So, John, like when the weaves start smelling like, okay, John, I got you, like burnt plastic. Okay. Oh, man. But I love that bit about the sunblock because people do think that, and it's like, we go to the beach. Like my wife's Brazilian, so she goes to the beach, dude. She loves to lay in the sun, she loves it. And I'm like, okay, babe, that's cool. I can't be here too long though. And I'll go run in the water, come back, so forth, so on. But we need that sunblock. I'm telling you right now. And otherwise and think about the fact that people that literally lay there all day long on a regular basis, that right there has always blown my mind, dude.
Yeah, it's insane. Black people look for the shit. We'll be at a beach looking for trees, man. We're looking for some type of shade, or we're like under the umbrella, like we're like nothing is out. You know what I mean? Like because your skin, you'll get darker. And you're looking like a mismatch, you're walking around, your arms don't look like your chest, you know what I mean? So I just think it's a weird thing that people assume about us, but I think it's strange.
It is strange, and it's very funny. But that being said, you're a clean comic. I'm a clean comic as well. I was wondering what motivates you to perform as a clean comedian.
I think I consider myself just I can perform clean. Like normally my normal sets, I just talk and it's not necessarily clean. But I realize that because I can go back and forth, people see me as a clean comic as well. My material is not too crazy or whatever, but it is about my life. Like I think when I come up with the material, I mean, it's already like clean in my head, and then maybe when I go on stage, it becomes a little bit crazy or whatever. But being a clean comic to me, though, it just has given me way more opportunity than what I would have had if I just was like non-clean. Like, so,
Right.
in terms of like corporate shows, in terms of family-friendly shows, in terms of opportunities like Dry Bar, where they're looking for clean comedy, in terms of like, working on a cruise ship where they expect you to do a family show and you got to
Yeah.
get up there and do 45, 50 minutes of a clean show.
Yeah.
Or two clean shows. You got
Yeah.
to have material, and it's just like, you're missing out. It's kind of like when I used to coach basketball and I would have kids and they can school. They were great with their right hand, terrible at their left, never wanted to
Yeah.
work on it. And it was like, why use 50% of what you have? You know what I mean? Like, if people know you can only go right, they're gonna play you that way. But if you can go both ways, you got more opportunities to score. And I kind of look at being able to go clean. It gives me another lane for me to like score and make some money and have some amazing opportunities.
Well, if you really think about it, I tell a lot of young comedians all the time that are blue, and I'll say, look, man, if that's what you do, that's what you do. But at least have the ability to be clean. Just to echo your point about there being more revenue for you, if you have the ability, you can get a cruise ship contract. You can perform at corporate events, and the list goes on and on. You got a lot of these young guys, Orlando, they come out, dude, they think they're Bill Burr right out the gate, and I'm like, oh, wait, hold on, man. It took years for Bill Burr to establish that pace. Guys think that's because they're using a bunch of expletives and they're going to copy their hero. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be like Dave Chappelle. I'm going to be like Mike Epps or whatever. No, those guys, it took years for them to develop the ability to do that. And I bet you if you ask any one of them right now if they could do a clean set, no problem. No problem.
I don't think it's any problem. But I think the biggest thing about that is those comics have no idea that that audience is coming to see Bill Burr. They know what to expect.
Right.
They already know what they're gonna watch going in. They're fans of that person.
Exactly.
When you're somebody new, nobody knows who you are. You know what I mean? They're there to see a comedy show, so they don't know your type of comedy, so they don't. You know what I mean? So it's different. You can't even compare yourself to somebody like that.
Yeah, and I tell them, Orlando, I'm like, look, dude, if you want to get on Stephen Colbert, Conan O'Brien, Jimmy Fallon, any Jimmy Kimmel, any of those guys, you have to do a clean set. You have to have the ability to do that. Like you said, nobody knows who you are, so you got to establish, some years. It just takes work. You can't just come out of the gate and just, like I said, start throwing out a bunch of F-bombs and this, that's not what makes those guys funny. No. They worked on.
Yeah, like I did the Conan show in 2016, and a clean set. I mean, I when they tell you to send the material into Conan, they're not looking at a set where you're being dirty or being blue or whatever. They're looking for the set that you would do possibly on their show, and based on that set, they'll determine whether you're going to get Conan or not. And I did a clean set on Conan, and it went well. And it was good time.
Yeah, and the thing, think about the richest comedian, the most lucrative comedian in the world right now is Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is worth almost $1 billion, right? Yeah. And the guy is clean. And somebody asked him one time, they said, Jerry, do you ever curse? He said, all the time. I just don't curse on stage. So he was just saying that, there's a way to go about this. And like I said, whatever kind of comedy you do, I mean, do it, but try to be a skilled comedian first.
Yeah.
Try to work on being skilled, because it's definitely a craft. It's no joke. Pardoning the pun there, Orlando. Let me ask you this now. Do you still work open mics to build material?
I don't do as many open mics as I used to when I started off. I've been doing comedy now for 16 years, so it's
Okay.
been a while. But I do when I want to work on material, you know, I do go to open mics. But I because I worked, well, I was working before this pandemic, enough to where I could start like trying out new material on stage. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to go to open mics as much, but I do still go. So yeah.
Now, and so when you walk into these places, dude, you know how it is. It's usually a room a room full of comics. A lot of guys, they're thinking about what they're going to say when they get up. You don't have a real audience at a mic. And then so you
No.
got a lot of comedians that have like established themselves don't like going there because it's tough sledding. An open mic is just kind of really going uphill.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, it's a great place to work on material, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I agree. I agree with you. Like when I go there and I know there's comics in the crowd, like I know what I'm getting myself into. Like I know for me, it's just more me saying the idea, me getting comfortable with saying the new idea, just getting it out there. So I say it and then bringing that to a real stage with a real audience. It's not necessarily because I'm looking for from anything from the comics. Now, if the comics start laughing, then I know I probably have something there, but it's
oh
just
yeah,
more.
absolutely.
It's more for me to get the idea out as opposed to relying on it. Like this works and this doesn't work because there's things that comics laugh at that an audience won't laugh at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just understanding that difference. You know?
I think at the end of the day, if you can get a room full of comics to laugh at your material, it's more likely that it's pretty good stuff. However, there is that caveat where only a comic could relate to that particular joke. So you're right, you do have that. What about hecklers? How do you deal with hecklers at a show?
Uh, normally, I try to gauge where they're coming from. Like if they're
Okay.
somebody that's heckling and they just don't realize like that's not what you're supposed to do at comedy shows, or they're just excited and they want to have a good time, or they're just interrupting and they don't even realize that they're interrupting like that. I kind of use that as like a teaching moment in a funny way. But if they're
Okay.
kind of like their intention is to heckle. Like they came there to heckle. I'm
Yeah.
trying to embarrass them to shut up. Like I'll focus my attention on them to make them feel bad. And a lot of times because I'm very relaxed on stage, the audience is really on my side, so it usually works. And if worst case scenario goes, I'm hoping the club will step in and just kick them out because there's some people that they can't get over the fact that they're not the center of the attention. You know what I mean? So
Orlando,
yeah.
I do. What is your most prolific moment in shutting a heckler down?
Oh man, I don't think I have I don't think I have a prolific moment. I think
Okay.
I mean I've embarrassed people. I mean I probably made someone get up and leave. I guess that would probably be the best one. I got a person that like just like shut up and leave. Or sometimes I'll bring somebody on stage. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I'll act like I'm their friend, and then oh yeah, you funny, and then you bring them on stage, and then they just completely make themselves look like the a-hole, and you know,
No, well,
and then
I've seen a comedian do that to a heckler before. Just brought him on stage.
yeah,
And the guy legitimately, and this is the problem with hecklers, they really think they're funnier than you.
yeah,
And the number one reason is because they don't see themselves up there, quite frankly and honestly. They just like to sit there and make everybody in the audience feel, I really know comedy. So a comedian actually brought this guy on the stage,
yeah,
and the guy just imploded for 3 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
It was brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah, no, and to me sometimes that's enough, But then there are some hecklers that are just drunk, and it doesn't matter what you say to them, they're gonna slur whatever they're saying back to you, and it doesn't work, and that's when they have to get out of the show because they're like completely ruining the show. You know what I mean? Comedy terrorists. That's what I call them.
That's a good point, Jill. They practically write your material for you at that point.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt about it. There's some comics, Orlando, that, and I'm not a proponent of it, but it is how should I put this? It is a marvel to see it, because there are comedians that live to destroy a heckler. Like, okay, dude, really? The next 20 minutes is going to be about you. And it's just brutal, man. It's terrible. But I was wondering.
I love watching that. It's hard for me to do it sometimes because I just feel like everybody else is like missing out on the show.
Yeah.
This individual, I'm dealing with this person, and I start to feel bad when I put too much attention on one person.
Well, you know what? I think that you know what? In my experience, 85% of that comes from drinking and no ill will at all. They're just happy. They're hyped, and they think they're helping. And then you give them their 15 seconds of fame, and they'll sit down. What about your worst bombing experience on stage, Orlando? What was that like?
I always say this one, but it's probably the worst one that I've had, and I've had many.
Yeah.
I had this one there's this bar in Boston called Slade's. I believe it's in Dorchester,
Okay.
Roxbury, and it's a black bar, very urban night.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I starting in Boston, I started in like the little main clubs and main rooms, and they were different audience, all white audience and whatever. So I remember maybe about a year and a half in, I go to Slade's because they were having like the guy running it, Jonathan Gates. Shout out to Jonathan Gates, very funny comedian out of Boston. So I'm about to do 5 minutes or whatever, and he brings me up on stage, and I get on stage. It's all our people, all black people in the crowd, and I look, there's a picture on the wall of a black dude. So I start talking about the picture on the wall. I had no idea this dude died and he passed away. And I was,
oh man, oh my gosh.
So already like there's this like hush.
Oh
right,
my gosh, dude. Oh man.
And I could see there's like chatter, there's like some anger. So I go right, at that point in time, I did not have like confidence or the ability to just be like, yo, man, like ask, like, what's up with this? I didn't have the stage presence to really
the machismo at that time wasn't quite there yeah.
So I was out of my element. So I go, when you're out of your element, you go right back to jokes, right? So I just jumped right back into the jokes. So I started doing my jokes. When I tell you I was getting absolutely nothing, pin drop, you couldn't hear anything. I didn't get booed or anything, but nothing. So then after the show, Jonathan comes up, and I go sit down, and I'm sweating and I'm hot. And I'm like, God, that was terrible. And then Jonathan goes, man, I've never received this many texts saying, get this brother off the stage in my life. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I was like, oh my. So I went from feeling small to like even smaller. But a couple months later, I came back and I redeemed myself. I didn't talk about the picture. I just told the jokes, and that went well. So
and it was never about your ability to tell the jokes. It was like you stepped into a bear trap. You had no idea. And that killed you right off the rip. Like you were done. No matter what you said after that, they weren't hearing you.
And well, I would have played it differently. I would have definitely played it differently now because I would have but I would have asked questions. Like I'm comfortable enough. Like I've been on stage enough times to know that even when you're wrong sometimes and you say something that's out of line, I have the ability to just talk to people. Hey, who is this dude? Like, you know what I mean? And I think that's something I did not have back then. So
Orlando, I had a buddy of mine. He invited me to a comedy show. Now get this, you talk about a curveball. I do churches. I don't like to say, well, I'm a Christian comedian. I'm a clean comedian, even though I am. I'm just a comedian, but this is what I do. And this is one of my buddies in that particular industry. And so I go over to the show, dude. He had another side, Orlando. Man, I walked to the door. He was sitting up on the stage, dude. I mean, it was one expletive after another. I walked into it. Hey, what's up, my main man, Maurice Brown? Expletive, expletive. I'm like, oh, okay. What's up? I mean, straight up urban room. I mean, it was def comedy in that joint, dude. And I don't do that kind of comedy. So I was like, all right, here comes the challenge. I didn't see this coming. So I get up there, dude, and I'm telling my normal joke, dude, it ain't going down. It ain't happening. Or I said, okay, I'm gonna have to put some.
No,
I
I'm just
said,
saying that
it's
experience.
tough, man. I said, I'm gonna have to put. I'm gonna have to put some spit on this fastball right here because this ain't working. So I did. I put a little bit of edge on it, and I had the whole room laughing. And that's when I chucked the deuce and said, okay, it's time to roll out. At least I can leave on a good laugh. I stopped just short of a bombing because I didn't know what I was walking into. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I didn't know my man had another side. But it's all good. It's all good, man. Hey, listen, when you're a comic, Orlando, expect a bomb. It's going to happen. It's unavoidable.
To me, it's like baseball or it's like boxing. Even the best boxers will hit. You know what I mean? You're not going to be as good as Floyd Mayweather is. There's still rounds where he gets hit, rounds where he takes a good shot. So I think it's the same thing. I look at it like baseball. Sometimes you're going to strike out. You don't know when. It doesn't matter how great of a hitter you are. It's just part of the game.
Well, the element of bombing exists with every show you do. It's always in play. Like this could be, going back to your boxing analogy, this could be the night, pardon the pun, Orlando, that I could catch that bomb. You know what I'm saying? So you got to understand that. You had an opportunity to do a dry bar comedy special out in Provo, Utah. I've heard nothing but great things about the people out there in Provo. What was it like?
It was a great experience, man. Like the staff at Dry Bar were amazing. Like the audiences come there ready to laugh, so they're all juiced up. And I had a really good time. I mean, it was my first time, I believe, in Utah. I've done several colleges since since that show. But the audience was great. Like I was a little bit nervous. I was like, oh man, it's gonna be nothing but Mormons here. And so you get a little bit nervous and you're like, oh, I hope they can connect. But I think there was another part of me that knew, because I have a lot of experience doing clean shows. I'm like, this is gonna work. I'll be fine. And it was. It ended up being a really good time. So I enjoyed that experience.
What is the biggest thing that you have learned about stand-up comedy after all the years and time you have put in that has made you a better comedian?
I think two things. The first thing would be, everybody has their own journey in stand-up, and if you just focus on your own and don't worry about who's ahead of you and who got this or who got that, and just focus on your own thing, it's gonna pay dividends. You'll be better off. Like you won't be as stressed out. And I think the other thing would be to just make sure, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and challenge yourself experiences. Like for me, probably one of the things that I've done since I left school was I performed in a lot of like international comedy festivals, and so that's like a big part of my comedy career, the international part. I've been to 12 countries. I've been to Pakistan, South Africa, Australia. I've done the Edinburgh Fringe Festival a couple of times.
Wow.
Wrote 4 hours. So those experiences and that exposure to comedy globally has helped me a lot in terms of they were challenging, because you're not only dealing with a different culture, but some of your references and stuff might not work, and it kind of has helped me write a little bit more, even more universal than I did before. Like sometimes when you're a comic, you kind of write local references, and then when you stop performing around the country, you're like, oh, I can't do that. I got to kind of expand. And I think the same thing happened when I started performing in different countries. It just made me think globally. Like, how does this work in here? Like in Boston, LA, London,
Yeah.
and Johannesburg. You know what I mean? So you always keep that in mind.
What is it like, the language barrier, as far as your punchlines go? Did it take you a while to adjust to that?
Yeah, it didn't take me a while, just because I think comedy in America is so like popular, and with
Okay.
social media, and we're just like it's like the birthplace of stand-up comedy. So you got a lot of people that love American comics, so they understood some of the references and whatnot, but you still got to adjust. There's a lot of
Yeah.
you know American comics that go over to the UK and they do not do well. So just being in that culture a little bit, and just having this American perspective on their culture, and writing jokes in that fashion, in addition to being able to be yourself, and really speak what's on your heart, and the jokes that you have behind it. It's been very helpful to me.
Yeah, Bill Burr was talking about that. He went on an international tour, and like you said, I mean, American comedy is followed by people all around the world. They love American stand-up comedy, but there are pockets in Europe where they kind of don't get it. I think he said he was in an Eastern European country. I don't know if it was Austria or wherever it was, but he said rather than listen and have a good time, they were trying to solve the problem in the joke. They were like, why don't you just tell them you're sorry? But I mean, I think he said that was the only place where he actually bombed was over in Austria, because they just simply don't quite get what we're doing. They like it, but they just don't quite get it. So but I just wondered what it's like, because there's so many American comedians that go abroad and do well, and do very well, and I've always found that pretty intriguing. What about nervousness and butterflies before you go on stage, Orlando? How do you handle that?
For me, I don't get. It depends on the situation. Like if it's like a brand new, like a big situation, maybe like something on television, or some competition, or some type of bigger show, or even when I'm headlining in a new place.
Yeah.
I'll get a little bit nervous, but what I'll do is I just need some time. You got to know who you are as a person. Like if you're the type of person that needs a few minutes to yourself, or I don't like to talk before I like kind of like go. I'm about to go up on stage. I like, you know what I mean. So I'll disengage from a conversation. Like, yo, let me focus on my set. So normally that's the case, but I don't really get too nervous in non like big situations. It just depends. It depends.
Yeah. I got into the habit of not thinking anything about once I get to the venue, I'm done with my set. The notes, going over it in my mind, I try to completely disengage myself from what I'm going to do. It's like if I don't have it now, I'm never going to know it. So that means I'm going to make myself even more nervous. So I'm done. When I walk in the venue, it's time to have a good time, chit chat, talk, and just enjoy the night, and then trust your preparation once you get the mic. And a lot of times I find that works really well, because you got to study, you got to prepare, you got to go over your stuff. I mean, it's work, man, and it's tedious to remember all that stuff, to get total control of the material and say it the way you want to say it. You got to practice, man. You have got to practice in this business if you want to do well.
Yeah, you gotta practice, or you gotta get up as much as possible. Like for me, like I have a terrible memory, but so a lot of the jokes that I write are based on experiences, so I don't I don't forget it. And then I think I don't normally I won't go in with like some huge set of what I'm gonna do. I just kind of do what I'm gonna do, and whatever comes to mind, I can kind of do it. But and I'll do jokes differently and take different angles. But I've been on stage a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the difference between comedy. I don't know if you've ever done any acting or not, maybe in a stage play, or if you've ever been in a commercial or a film. I had an opportunity to be in Love Different with Tommy Ford from the TV show Martin from back in the day in 2016. And God rest his soul, he passed away in 2016, later that year. But dude, he's very funny. But what I found was, when you're doing a script for acting, it's like you need to know the script word for word.
Yeah.
You know, you everything, the way that writer put it on the script, you better say it the way he wrote it.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's one thing. But when you're doing comedy, it's more idea oriented. Like, I want to make sure that I remember all this stuff, but it doesn't have to be word for word. It's going to come out the way I want it to come out, based on how I feel at the time. You know what I mean? They're two distinctly different things. And so, you know what I mean?
Yeah, comedy for me, I like to play around. Like, I like sometimes I'll play with my pace. Sometimes I'll play with how loud I say things, to how soft. Sometimes I'll act things out. Sometimes I won't act them out. So I like to play around with a lot of things until I find the thing where I'm like, all right, I like this way the best.
Yeah.
Or different something, different punchlines, different tags. But, you know, like I said, it's like getting up on stage. That's the thing.
Well, and that's also key as well. I mean, you got to perform a lot, man. Just before I came up here, I did a Zoom open mic. I try to just stay. And you know what's cool about this Zoom, dude? Man, I got friends now, you know, all over, not only the country, but the world. I have friends in the UK, Luxembourg, I think Switzerland. I don't know where that is. Turkey, or Canada, Germany, California. I'm in DC, and that's really cool. But long story short, you got to get up and perform. And even if you have to do it on Zoom, you don't want to lose that ability to just think on your feet and what have you. Orlando, this has been a great convo, man. I tell you, we have destroyed this hour, man. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you if you have any advice that you can leave with young, aspiring comedians that want to get into this for a full-time career.
For a full-time career, I think, you know, Joe Coy is a national known comedian, a big mentor, a good friend of mine. When I was teaching, he would always say, you know, there's a difference between being a teacher that does comedy or in a comedy that used to be a teacher. I mean, you got to take that leap, man. Like, if you got the ability, you know, take that leap, because it's not going to happen unless you do it. And I would say just, take the leap and understand that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You know, there are a few people that it's very rare for somebody to like jump into comedy and then immediately have a, you know, skyrocket to success. It takes people a lot of time. You know, everybody's journey is their own, and just work hard. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of sacrifice. I think that's the biggest thing that people don't understand. A lot of birthdays I miss, relationship situations that get messed up. It's a lot of sacrifice, because most people have the weekends off, and that's your work week. You're aware.
That's true. That's true. That's great advice, man. A lot of people don't realize it does take a lot of work, and you got to get up there a lot. I remember hearing a story about Chris Rock's beginning into the comedy world. He killed the first 4 or 5 times he got on stage, and he thought it was a piece of cake. I mean, and then all of a sudden he started bombing. You know, and it was like, whoa, what's going on? You got to write. And you got to write, and then you got to get up there and you got to find out what works and what doesn't, and all those. And then he learned that, you know, comedy is a craft. It's a skill. It's not just showing up and being that funny guy in the break room at work. It's a completely different deal. So that's great advice, Orlando. Young people need to hear that without a doubt. How can fans follow you on social media or contact you for booking?
Yeah, they can go to orlandobaxter.com, my website, or they can just follow me on Instagram, Orlando Baxter Comedy, or Facebook, just my page, Orlando Baxter. That's pretty much it in terms of like how you can contact me.
Now, as far as what's coming up in the near future, are there anything that Orlando you can share with us as far as maybe projects on the horizon that are coming up?
Well, I did, speaking of acting, I did act in my first small independent movie during the pandemic. So, that should be it's getting shopped around now. So I'm very
Okay.
happy about that. So that I'll have more information about when that'll come out on my webpage. And as far as like, I do a lot of stuff for like teachers and schools. So if you're a school and you need a fundraiser for your school, and you need I got a little package thing together, so if you have a school and they're trying to raise some money, hit me up. I could be very helpful to them. I've been helping out a lot of schools and raising a lot of money for schools for a while now, so just reach out to me at orlandobaxter.com.
Amen. Sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with comedian Orlando Baxter. You got to check out his Dry Bar comedy special on the Maurice Brown Show. And if you like this video, please like and share and subscribe to the Maurice Brown Comedy channel on YouTube. And tonight at about 7 p.m., 8 o'clock at the latest, if you missed this, you can see the re-airing on the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV. That's going to be about 7 or 8 o'clock this evening. We've been chatting with comedian Orlando Baxter on the Maurice Brown Show. Once again, Orlando, thanks for being on the show, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family, brother. God bless you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate being here. Appreciate you, Maurice.